If you really want to understand the soul of a country, you usually you usually look at its loudest moments, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You look at the massive historical milestones or, the political upheavals.
Right, the bustling city squares, the roaring economic data, because we are just so conditioned to measure a culture by its volume.
We really are. But today, we're looking at a man whose childhood was defined by, frankly, absolute chaos and tragedy,
Yeah, and yet he grew up to paint what critics essentially call complete silence.
which is wild.
Yeah.
And it turns out looking at that silence is actually the ultimate shortcut to understanding Finland.
It really is. It completely upends how we usually consume history.
Yeah, we are stepping away from the tourist brochures, and the loud statistics. We're stepping into a masterclass in quiet observation.
Which is such a refreshing shift, honestly. So today, we are immersing ourselves in an incredible piece of source material. It's an excerpt titled The Silent Landscapes of Eero Nelimarkka.
And that text serves as a gateway to the Ateneum Art Museum right in the center of Helsinki, where a lot of his work is hanging today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to explore how looking at the canvases of this one single painter, Eero Nelimarkka, gives you a profound, almost visceral understanding of an entire nation's emotional landscape.
Right, because this isn't just um, a biographical art history lesson. Not at all.
No, no.
We are looking at the mechanics of how a country literally learns to see itself, through the framing of a canvas.
Exactly.
And the source material anchors us on this incredible concept of the fleeting moment.
The fleeting moment. I love that phrase.
It's so evocative. It's a deep dive into how Nelimarkka managed to capture the very subtle, quiet rhythm of Finnish life, distill it, and then reflect it back to the exact people who are actually living it.
Yeah, and to really appreciate how he managed to paint the quiet dignity of Finland, it's wild to realize the sheer chaos of the environment that actually forged his worldview.
Oh, completely. The contrast is jarring.
Right. Because you look at these perfectly serene, silent landscapes, and then you look at his origins, and the friction between the two is it's intense.
It really is.
So he was born in a town called Vaasa in 1891, and the source doesn't sugarcoat this at all. His early life is described outright as a survival story.
A survival story, which is a remarkably stark phrase to use in the context of fine art, don't you think?
Right,
I
right.
mean, when we study the great painters of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, we're usually reading about a certain baseline of comfort.
Exactly. I mean, that is usually the assumption, right?
Right. You picture an artist with, like, a wealthy patron.
Or at least some family money,
Nah,
lounging in a bohemian studio, contemplating aesthetics. But Nelimarkka's reality was gritty.
extremely gritty.
His father passed away in a mental hospital, and his mother was left completely alone to support the family by working as a washerwoman.
A washerwoman. That is backbreaking work.
It is. It's a childhood defined by scraping by brutal physical labor, by profound loss.
Yeah.
So, given that incredibly difficult, chaotic background, you have to ask, how does a young man in that position even find his way to a canvas? I mean, the odds seem entirely insurmountable.
They really do. And it highlights a crucial turning point in his life. Because despite the overwhelming pressure of simply surviving, his talent manifested early.
Really early.
Yeah. And he began studying art locally in Finland. And it was there that his raw potential caught the eye of Ekseli Gallen-Kallela.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is a monumental figure to have in your corner. I mean, Gallen-Kallela is essentially Finnish art royalty.
He absolutely is.
Mm.
And the thing is, Gallen-Kallela didn't just give Nelimarkka a polite critique and, send him on his way.
He didn't just pat him on the back.
No, he actively intervened. He recognized that this young man had a vision that needed oxygen. So he pointed Nelimarkka toward Paris and urged him to study abroad.
Which is a huge deal.
It is. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
you have to realize the sheer risk and significance of that move.
Oh, for sure.
You are taking a young man forged in a rural, impoverished survival story, and you're dropping him directly into the absolute epicenter of the global art world.
Especially in that specific era. Paris at that time was not, it wasn't a quiet place to study classical painting.
Not at all.
The avant-garde was actively tearing up the rule book.
Mhm.
You had Cubism exploding, Fauvism changing how people used color.
Right, it was revolutionary.
All these radical, cosmopolitan modernists breaking down traditional aesthetics. I mean, You would fully expect a young kid from Vaasa to just get swallowed whole by that scene and completely lose his roots.
Which is the typical trajectory, honestly.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
A young artist goes to Paris, they become enamored with the cafes and the bohemian lifestyle, and suddenly their work becomes deeply French, deeply modernist, and entirely disconnected from where they started.
Exactly.
But Nelimarkka, he absorbs the technical freedom of these radical movements.
Yeah.
He learns how to structure a canvas, how to manipulate light and geometry.
Right.
But he does all of that without ever letting those techniques overwrite his finished subjects.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. He goes to the artistic capital of Europe, learns all these incredible avant-garde techniques, and he flips the script.
He totally does.
He packs up all that world-class modern theory and brings it right back home. And he uses it to paint the most unassuming subjects imaginable.
Yes.
It makes me think of like a brilliant young chef who gets a scholarship to the most elite Michelin star culinary school in the world.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like they learn the intense chemistry of cooking, the avant-garde plating, the flawless technique. But instead of opening some pretentious foam-covered restaurant in a major metropolis,
Right.
they go back to their rural hometown and use all of that elite training to just perfectly elevate their grandmother's rustic stew.
Yes.
It's taking the absolute highest level of technical craft and applying it to the everyday.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it, because he didn't use Paris to escape his origins.
Yeah.
He used Paris to elevate them. His major artistic breakthrough doesn't happen in a Parisian salon. It happens when he returns and sets his sights on the landscapes and the rural life of South Ostrobothnia.
South Ostrobothnia, just these wide, flat plains.
Yeah, very flat.
Simple wooden farmhouses. I mean, the most unpretentious terrain you could possibly choose.
Yes, and structurally, the mechanics of how he painted those plains are where you see the Parisian influence merging with the Finnish soul.
How so?
Well, he takes the horizontal vast emptiness of Ostrobothnia, and he applies a modernist sense of space and geometry to it.
Oh, I see.
But he never makes it loud. And the reason this resonated so deeply with the public, the actual mechanism behind his eventual massive success, is that the Finnish people looked at these canvases and finally saw their own authentic lives reflected back at them.
Reflected back with profound dignity.
Exactly.
They weren't looking at dramatic, romanticized mythology. They were looking at their own backyards.
Precisely. They saw the quiet, everyday reality they actually lived, but painted with the reverence usually reserved for, like, royalty or epic historical battles.
Wow.
And that authentic, grounded connection is how Nelimarkka earned the title, the Artist of Finnish Homes.
The Artist of Finnish Homes. What a beautiful, grounding title.
It really is.
And it clearly struck a chord because the source notes that his work became incredibly popular. He was widely collected.
Very much so.
So this young boy who started his life watching his mother's scrub clothes just to survive the winter eventually becomes a highly established, wealthy, and celebrated painter. It's an amazing trajectory.
It is, and it brings us to the physical experience of walking through the Ateneum Art Museum today.
Right, where the exhibition is.
Yeah. The source takes us on a conceptual tour of this exhibition. You see the famous South Ostrobotnian landscapes, but you also encounter charming city scenes, still lifes, and a really significant collection of portraits.
And this is where the source really zeroes in on his technique, isn't it?
It is, because Nelimarkka's unique power, particularly in his portraits, is defined almost entirely by what he chooses not to paint.
Yes, it's the absolute absence of action.
Exactly.
The source describes these portraits like a woman sitting quietly or a farmer just resting in a chair, someone looking slightly away from the viewer.
Right.
There is zero dramatic tension, and it made me think about our modern relationship with being looked at. We have this total obsession with posing, right?
Oh, completely.
You see a camera and you immediately suck in your stomach, you fix your posture, you manufacture this big dramatic smile.
I'll do it.
We present a highly curated spectacle, but Nelimarkka isn't painting the pose. He is purposefully painting the moment between the poses.
The moment between.
The exhale, the moment when nobody is trying to perform for an audience.
What's fascinating here is his total rejection of that spectacle and, how he achieves it mechanically.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, he had all the technical skill in the world from Paris. If he wanted to paint dramatic, sweeping action with vibrant, chaotic colors, he easily could have.
He had the tools.
He absolutely had the tools. But instead, he captures what the source beautifully calls a fragile pause.
A fragile pause.
And he does this by deliberately stripping away deep shadows and sharp contrasts. He uses these flattened, muted, earthy tones, so your eye isn't darting around the canvas looking for the drama.
Right.
Your eye is forced to rest.
So instead of using his Parisian training to turn the volume up, it's like he learned world-class acoustic engineering just to perfectly capture the sound of a pin dropping in a quiet room.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. He engineers the canvas for stillness.
Wow.
When you look at the subjects in these portraits, they appear deeply thoughtful, but they aren't engaging with you. They aren't performing for the artist.
They're just being.
Right. They're just existing in their own space. He is focusing entirely on their inner life. And this technique perfectly mirrors the quiet rhythm of life in rural Finland during that era.
A society that moved incredibly slowly.
Yes, it was deeply, intrinsically shaped by the formidable nature around them and, the slow turning of the seasons.
Yeah.
There was no rush. There was just the steady, resilient rhythm of everyday existence. You don't survive a Finnish winter through frantic, chaotic energy.
Definitely not.
You survive it through steady, quiet resilience. And Nelimarkka captured the stillness of that specific survival rhythm perfectly.
Which has to be incredibly difficult to execute.
Oh, extremely.
I mean, it's easy to paint a storm at sea or a cavalry charge because the drama and the movement are built right into the subject matter.
The painting does the work for you.
Exactly. But to paint a farmer resting in a chair using muted, earthy tones and to make it so compelling that people are drawn to it a century later,
Yeah.
that requires absolute mastery of that fragile pause. You have to really see the person and respect their silence.
And crucially, you have to be able to see yourself with that same level of unsparing honesty.
Ooh, yes.
Which brings us to a surprisingly prominent component of the exhibition at the Ateneum.
Yes, the self-portraits. This is a huge part of the source material.
It really is.
Along with the vast landscapes and the portraits of everyday rural people, there is a surprisingly large number of self-portraits hanging in the museum.
He painted himself a lot.
He painted his own face over and over again, which naturally brings us to the core philosophical takeaway of this deep dive. So, what does this all mean?
Right.
Because honestly, I found myself wrestling with this.
It feels like a contradiction at first glance, doesn't it?
It really does. It screams ego.
Yeah.
If this is a man who fiercely rejects spectacle, who champions modesty, who uses his elite training to paint unposed rural farmers, isn't dedicating dozens of canvases to your own face completely contradictory?
It seems like it.
Doesn't a massive collection of self-portraits inherently violate that Finnish modesty we've been talking about?
This raises an important question, but the source firmly pushes back on the assumption that these are born from vanity.
Okay, how so?
When you actually analyze the self-portraits alongside his other work, you don't see a man aggrandizing himself.
You don't?
No, you see the exact same quiet introspection and the same muted, earthy tones. His gaze in these paintings is described as direct but highly reserved.
Interesting.
He isn't putting himself on a pedestal. He is revealing three very specific core traits about his worldview.
Okay, let's go through those.
The first being a profound sense of self-reflection.
So it's less of a pedestal and more of a microscope. He's scrutinizing himself.
Exactly that. The source notes that he studies himself almost analytically. He is constantly examining his own role.
Like trying to figure himself out.
Yeah, he's asking the canvas, who am I in relation to this art, in relation to this newly forming nation? It's a philosophical inquiry, not a promotional campaign.
I see. So if he isn't agonizing in these paintings or portraying himself as some dramatic, tortured artist, I imagine he's using his own face to project that same rural stoicism we saw in the farmers.
He is, and that is the second core trait the source identifies: stoicism.
Stoicism.
Yes. His expressions in these self-portraits are incredibly controlled. And that choice echoes the deepest cultural ideals of Finnish emotional restraint.
Right, not making a big fuss.
Exactly. He doesn't paint himself in the throes of wild inspiration or deep despair. He is calm. He is observant.
He embodies the exact same resilience and quiet strength of the rural culture he was born into.
He really does.
So he's proving he hasn't lost his roots. He went to Paris, but he's still fundamentally a man of the Ostrobothnian plains.
Yes. And that naturally leads to the third trait revealed in these portraits, which is how he viewed his professional identity.
Which was?
Nelimarkka completely rejects the Parisian trope of the romantic genius.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, he doesn't portray himself as a bohemian visionary floating above society. He presents himself quite simply as a working craftsman.
Oh, that brings the Michelin star chef making the rustic stew full circle.
It does.
He views his art as labor.
Precisely. He sees himself as a working man devoted to a daily craft. He is part of the exact same restrained, thoughtful, working-class society that he paints.
That makes perfect sense.
He doesn't view himself as existing on a higher plane than the washerwomen or the farmers. He is one of them. He just happens to work with a brush instead of a plow or a washboard.
Wow. That reframes the entire concept of a self-portrait.
Doesn't it?
It's not a selfie, it's not branding. It's a statement of solidarity with his subjects.
That's a great way to put it.
By painting himself with the same muted tones and the same fragile pauses, he's basically saying, I share your quiet rhythm. I am made of the same earth.
Yes.
And the enduring power of all this art really does come back to that grounded simplicity. As the source highlights, the farmers, the wooden homes, the modest interiors, the vast flat landscapes, they are all painted completely without exaggeration.
None at all.
He distills the profound dignity of everyday life into its purest form.
He captures the very specific emotional landscape of the Finnish character. He translates a society's complex relationship with silence, with open space, and with physical resilience into a visual language.
And that brings us right back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
If you are ever trying to truly understand a place, whether it's Finland or anywhere else, you can read all the travel guides, you can analyze the economic output, memorize the political history, and search for the loudest, most dramatic events on the timeline.
You can try.
But standing in front of Nelimarkka's art and understanding how he engineered his canvases to project simplicity, dignity, and a total lack of exaggeration is a far more powerful shortcut to understanding the soul of the country.
It really is.
It teaches you how they relate to solitude, to nature, and to each other.
It is the difference between reading a topographical map of a forest and actually standing in the trees and breathing the air.
That's beautiful.
The art gives you the atmosphere.
That gives you the silence. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the silent landscapes of Eero Nelimarkka, there's one final thought we want to leave you with. Something to mull over and explore on your own long after you finish listening today.
We've spent a lot of time today exploring how Nelimarkka managed to capture the essence of an era by meticulously painting its fragile pauses.
Right.
He found the profound meaning in the moments between the poses, in the quiet exhalations of rural life. But contrast that with our modern reality.
Oh boy.
We live in an era entirely defined by constant digital noise.
It's exhausting.
We are bombarded by notifications from the moment we wake up. We're surrounded by outward spectacle, and we are constantly curating our image for a perceived audience.
Always performing.
Always. So in a world this persistently loud, where would an artist today even look to find a genuine fragile pause?
It's a heavy question. Finding an unposed moment today feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It does. And to make it even more personal for you, if a master painter were to observe you and they decided to paint the absolute quietest moments of your own day,
Oh, wow.
the moments when the screen is finally off, when there is no audience, when you are just existing in your own uncurated rhythm, what would that emotional landscape reveal about you?
Think about that the next time you manage to drop the volume of the world around you and you finally find a moment of complete silence.